Welcome to Matt Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my November reading wrap up, which is actually sort of on time for once. So I wasn't entirely pleased with my November because I only have 6 finished things listed because honestly most of my month was spent reading and rereading Austen Variations I've already read this year. I think there's a lot of change happening at work, which means I'm stressed. I managed to actually injure my back rather than just have my normal issues while still having my normal issues. And so yeah, it was a bit of a difficult month for me. So that's unfortunately left me a few books behind schedule on my overall goal. I have to finish 13 things this month and we're already a week in. Yeah, I have plans though, which I'll talk about later, to try and up my reading so that I can hit my goal at the end of the month. I do go on leave just before Christmas, so that will help. So what did I read in November? I read or listened to and finished Hockey Rants and Raves by Steve Dangle Glynn. So Steve Dangle Glynn is a hockey YouTuber. He's a massive fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs and he's essentially turned being a fan of the Leafs into a career. So with his YouTube videos, with his podcasts, with his books. I'm not a regular listener to the podcast or watcher of his videos, but I do like to pop in and check on them occasionally. I quite like him. He's written a couple of books. Hockey Rants and Raves is his newest one, which has only just come out. So I listened to it on audio. And this is essentially him basically having opinions on different things to do with the NHL, whether it's what his goalie Mount Rushmore is, or what he thinks about fighting, or, getting really, really angry about the Leafs. So that was actually a really entertaining listen because he reads it himself, which means there are actually a few asides that, like, since I wrote this happened. So some things I agreed with, some things I didn't have an opinion on because I don't have enough knowledge of the history of hockey. Some things I really disagreed with, like the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury is not in his potential hockey Mount Rushmore list. Like, come on, it's the Flower. I know he's still playing, but it's the Flower and he's about to retire. Come on. Anyway, then I finished a reread of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. That was a bit of a comfort read, a bit of a calm me down read. So I did read that in physical copy, I think. I'm not sure what I've done with it. It's possibly back up on the shelf. But yeah, so you know me. Always love a reread of Jane Austen. Then I was like, I need to read more stories with queer characters. And I need to start reading some shorter stuff so I can catch up. So I read The Brides of High Hill by Nevo. This is the latest in the Singing Hills cycle series of novellas. I didn't love this one. Like, I usually adore this particular series of novellas. I didn't love this one. It was a bit more into the horror spectrum. In a way that I sort of didn't see coming. So the twist, the fantasy twist, caught me by surprise and made me a little bit uncomfortable. So the whole thing honestly made me a little bit uncomfortable because it was dealing with arranged marriages with a bride that was much, 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 much younger than the prospective husband, who just seemed like an abuse case waiting to happen. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite one in this series. Well written. Nevo's writing's always great, but not my favorite. Then I read Bravery and Treachery by Shana Grandison, which is an Austen variation. In this particular one, there's a few different circumstances that lead Lizzie to go on holidays with the Gardiners to Brighton, where they meet Miss Darcy. And at this point, there's also a plot that Wickham is involved in to kidnap the illegitimate daughter of the Prince Regent. And Lizzie saves her and gets injured in the process, and things go from there. So that was very dramatic. I also read A Most Attentive Father, which is the most recent Jane Austen variation by Sydney Salia. And in this one, we have some slight inheritance changes based on who Mr. Bennet's mother was. So slight inheritance changes, which mean that Mr. Bennet is in a much better position. He doesn't tolerate his silly wife who compromised him misbehaving, and he is attentive to his daughter's education and futures. So that creates an entirely different set of circumstances when the Bingleys and Mr. Darcy turn up. So there's that. And then the final thing that I finished in the month of November was Seven of Infinities by Aliette de Bodard. Now, this is one of my strategies to try and both up my number of queer characters, books with queer characters, and read some shorter things. Read some shorter things to try and get to my goal of 120 books at the end of the year. So, over the years, I have read bits and pieces of Aliette de Bodard's Zuya universe, which is her Mindship universe of short stories. I've essentially read a bunch of stuff that has appeared on Hugo lists, shortlists. But I've never read everything, and I've never read it from the start. So essentially I went on to Goodreads and went, right, I'm going to read what's on the Goodreads list in order. So the first thing on there was a novella, and it was Seven of Infinities. And in this one, a scholar who from a poor background is worried about her reputation until a corpse turns up in her student's room. And she ends up trying to investigate alongside a Mindship who offers assistance because they were in the same poetry group. Not knowing that the Mindship in question is hiding a past as a daring thief. So the Mindships in this universe are essentially, it's a science fictional universe with a Vietnamese empire. And Mindships are essentially the heart and AI of a ship is actually birthed by human women and then raised as a member of the family in the ship. It's complex. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but so essentially you get, and it's very much based in Vietnamese culture, but as space opera essentially, because Aliette de Bodard is French Vietnamese, I believe. So yeah, I really enjoy some of the stuff that I've read from this verse. So what I finished in November was Seven of Infinities, which was a novella. What I'm currently reading turned out to be a collection of short stories, which I'm not entirely sure all of them are Zuyaverse, but some of them it's really hard to tell. Because the description, like the blurb on Goodreads, mentions that there's a couple of other sort of fantasy ones that might show up later in the collection, but the ones I've read so far, they don't all have Mindships in them, but they're all sort of Vietnamese in space, and some of them might be before Mindships, and they use a lot of the same technology like bots and avatars, so it's a bit hard with some of them to tell whether they are actually Zuyaverse or not. But so far I'm enjoying them. There are, as with my collections, some I click with, some I don't. Some are quite dark, some are a little bit more hopeful. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. So that's my plan, is to continue reading the Zuya universe. I also want to take a couple of physical Outbreak books with me. I did start one last month, and I haven't got very far yet, but I was enjoying it. It's a witchy book, which is cool. So I want to take a couple of those with me when I go to Hobart. To Brighton, to Tassie. So I can hopefully actually read stuff while I'm there. But yeah, my hope is to read quite a lot of the Zoo universe, in the idea that hopefully that will mean shorter things. Shorter things, which I've been trying to also go back to the gym, but I keep injuring myself. I hurt my knee last night, which is already feeling better, although it did prevent me from going to my exercise class this morning. So I might be able to run tomorrow. We'll see how it feels. But yes, so I read 6 things in November. 2 of those were both author of colour and queer characters, but it has put me behind, so I do need to read 13 things in December. How do I always get myself into this position? I don't know. I'm terrible. Anyway, that is my November reading wrap up. I'm happy to discuss anything that I was reading in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye.